What if the most powerful army on a battlefield could be stopped? Not by bullets, but by cutting a single vein. That is exactly what is happening right now in eastern Ukraine. And when you understand how deep this goes, you will never look at this war the same way again. Before we get into it, if you find yourself learning something new in the next few minutes, hit that like button right now. Subscribe so you never miss an analysis like this, and share this with someone who needs to understand what is really happening on the ground. Let's go. Putin did not stumble into Donbass. He chose it. He wrote it into the Russian constitution. He declared the occupied territories Russian soil. He told his generals, in plain language, take it to the end. This was not strategy. This was obsession. And obsession, as history often shows us, creates blind spots. To fulfill that obsession, Russia moved an enormous force into the Luhansk axis. We are talking about more than 110,000 troops, 1,000 tanks, 2,000 armored vehicles, hundreds of artillery systems. The goal was to break through the Sloviansk-Kramatorsk line, a fortified chain of cities that Ukraine has been defending fiercely, and completely capture Donbass before the end of 2026. On paper, this looks like overwhelming force. In reality, in 2026, this entire force has captured just 0.4% of Ukrainian territory. Let that number sit for a moment. One of the largest military concentrations in modern warfare, moving at the speed of almost nothing. Why? Because an army does not run on courage alone. It runs on fuel. It runs on ammunition. It runs on food. It runs on spare parts. It runs on reinforcements. And all of that, every single drop, every single shell, every single loaf of bread, has to travel from somewhere to the front line. The question is how? In Donbass, the answer is simple and dangerous at the same time. It comes by rail. A force of 110,000 soldiers needs roughly 3,000 tons of supplies every single day. That is 80 to 100 railway wagons of material, moving constantly just to keep the machine breathing. You cannot replace that with trucks. Not because Russia lacks trucks, but because every truck that moves on an open road in this conflict becomes a drone target within minutes. The roads are death traps. So everything that keeps this army alive flows through one network, one set of tracks, one system. And Ukraine has figured out exactly how to strangle it. The railway lines running from Rostov and Kursk converge into Luhansk and then extend southward toward Mariupol, Berdyansk, and Crimea. Think of it like the main artery of a human body, one central channel pumping life to everything connected to it. Cut that channel and the whole system starts to fail. Russia knew this vulnerability existed, so it tried to protect the line. Air defense systems were positioned at key junctions. Supply depots were covered with camouflage nets. Drone signals were targeted with electronic warfare. Supply points were relocated every few days to avoid being tracked. Russia was not sleeping. It was actively defending its lifeline. But here's the problem with defending a single line. It does not matter how many guards you place along it. If someone cuts the line, everything stops. The guard at the far end cannot help the cut at the near end. A single point of failure, no matter how well protected, is still a single point of failure. And on May 31st, Ukraine proved exactly that. An unmanned systems battalion operating with Ukraine's 3rd Army Corps sent drones 205 kilometers deep into occupied territory. Not 50 kilometers, not 100 kilometers, 205 kilometers. They struck the Izvarain border crossing, the very first gate through which heavy weapons, ammunition, and fresh troops enter from Russia into occupied Luhansk. Every train that feeds the Donbass front passes through that crossing. This was not a strike on the middle of the line. This was a strike on the valve where the line connects to Russia itself. And the footage that was released revealed something even more striking. Those drones flew over Luhansk city, a major urban center under Russian control, without meeting any resistance. No air defense engaged them. No system stopped them. Either Russia's air defense in that area had already been destroyed by previous strikes, or it had simply been rendered ineffective. Brigadier General Dmytro Bitky, the commander of the 3rd Corps, made a direct statement. Luhansk is now under the control of our drones. Russia holds the ground, but it has lost the sky above it. The man behind the operational planning for that strike carries the call sign SKID, meaning east. He was born in Luhansk. In 2022, he was airlifted into besieged Mariupol and joined its defense. When the city fell, he broke through Russian lines alone, on foot, and escaped to Ukrainian territory. He was awarded the title Hero of Ukraine for that. Now he is controlling the airspace above the city where he was born, striking the logistics network of the army that occupies it. That is not just military strategy. That is something more personal and more powerful than most battlefield stories you will hear. But this operation did not happen in isolation. The infrastructure behind it was built deliberately, carefully, and over time. On the night of May 23rd, just days before the Izvarain strike, the SBU and Ukraine's unmanned systems forces launched a coordinated attack on 5 separate logistics. Targets in Luhansk at the exact same moment: a fuel train, an ammunition depot, a drone repair base, communications infrastructure, a troop staging area. 5 targets, 5 different locations, all struck within the same minute. Think about what that coordination requires. Drones launched from different bases, flight paths calculated to ensure arrival at targets that are up to 80 kilometers apart from each other, all landing at the same time. This is not improvised, this is engineered, and it became possible because of something that was established in early 2026, Ukraine's Deep Strike Command Center. Real-time intelligence, target authorization, and strike execution all unified under one roof. But knowing where to strike requires more than satellite imagery. Russia had worked hard to defeat that. It moved supply points constantly. It draped camouflage netting over fuel depots. It moved fuel trains during daylight hours and unloaded them at night. From the sky, these measures can work. From the ground, they cannot hide anything. This is where the Atesh partisan network becomes critical. Atesh is a resistance organization operating inside Russian-occupied territory in a cell structure. These are people who live under occupation. They walk past the depots. They see the fuel trains move. They note the new positions. And they relay that information to Ukrainian intelligence. Camouflage can fool a satellite. It cannot fool a person who walks by the same road every morning. When the SBU combined that ground-level human intelligence with satellite data and signals intelligence, Russia's entire defensive layout became readable. The locations of air, defense systems, the frequencies of electronic warfare equipment, the new positions of relocated supply points, everything mapped, everything targetable. And the strike platform being used, the Firepoint FP2 drone, was designed specifically to exploit that intelligence. A 158-kilogram warhead, autonomous navigation that does not rely on GPS, making it immune to electronic jamming, low-altitude flight that keeps it below radar detection. When 5 of these strike simultaneously across different points, Russia's air defense has to split its attention. And split attention means thinned protection at every single location. The campaign did not stay inside occupied territory either. The day after the 5-target strike, drones hit a freight train carrying propane tankers in the Lgov district of Kursk, inside Russia. Lgov is the key transfer junction on the rail line running south from Kursk, just 50 kilometers from the Ukrainian border. Military cargo, coming from deeper, inside Russia, gathers in Kursk and gets directed toward the front through Lgov. Fuel and ammunition heading to Luhansk pass through that junction. The explosion from the propane tankers created a visible column of fire over the town. The regional governor had to make a public statement, which itself tells you how large the damage was, because the Kremlin typically suppresses information about strikes on Russian soil. That was not the first time. In March, a fuel train in the same region was struck. A relay cabinet on the same line was destroyed. Defense Express, analyzing the data from the first 5 months of 2026, found that the number of fuel trains destroyed already exceeded the total for all of 2025. This is not a series of isolated hits. This is a systematic campaign with a pattern and a pace. Now think about what running out of fuel actually means for the units at the front. A T-72 tank burns through 260 liters of fuel per hour. When fuel runs out, the tank cannot move. A drone spots it sitting still. There is no escape. Infantry closes in. There is no maneuver. A tank without fuel is not a weapon. It is a fixed metal target. Artillery units use what is called shoot and scoot. Fire quickly, move immediately before the enemy can respond. No fuel means no scooting. The artillery stays exactly where it fired from, and it gets hit. Infantry in the trenches waits for ammunition, for food, for medical evacuation. But supply trucks cannot move on open roads anymore. And the worst consequence, possibly the most psychologically devastating, is this. When armored medical vehicles run out of fuel, wounded soldiers cannot be evacuated. The thought that takes root in a soldier's mind, if I get wounded, no one may come for me, does not just affect morale, it breaks the will to advance at all. Russia's response to its mounting casualties has been to reduce basic training time from 1 month to 1 week. It is rushing undertrained soldiers to the front just to fill preparation, and the logistics cannot even sustain the soldiers who are already there. Throwing more people into a system that cannot feed the people already in it does not solve the problem, it makes it worse. This is where you pause and ask, is this already decided? Is this campaign already over? Not yet. And that honesty matters. Russia has 8,500 railway troops. They can repair damaged rail within hours. Russia has adapted to every restriction placed on it since 2022. Sanctions, banking exclusions, export controls, energy embargoes. Each time the outside world expected Russia to collapse under pressure, it found a workaround. Assuming Ukraine's logistics campaign will completely paralyze a country of Russia's size and industrial capacity would be a mistake. Russia is still attacking at more than 120 contact points per day along the front. It is not standing still, and it is actively searching for alternative routes. When the main railway is under threat, it tries to shift cargo to roads. When roads become drone hunting grounds, it looks for other options. But here is the strategic trap that Russia cannot escape from. Every adaptation costs something. When air defense is moved from the front to protect the railway, the front loses air cover. When fuel is rerouted onto roads, those roads become targets, and the diversion adds time and cost. And when new routes are identified by Atesh agents and struck within days, Russia has to move again. Each move drains a resource somewhere else. Each solution opens a new vulnerability. Analysts have reached for a chess term to describe this situation. Zugzwang, a position where it is your turn to move, but every possible move makes your situation worse. The word was used independently in the Washington Post and in an essay in The Economist by a former Kremlin official. This is not Ukraine's framing. This is being acknowledged from the inside. Ukraine produces more than 200 strike drones per day. Each costs roughly 1/3 of what Russia pays for the Iranian-made Shahed drones it imports. Russia's railway troops can fix a broken rail in hours, but they cannot fix 5 targets struck simultaneously while also defending the repair crews, who are now being tracked by thermal sensors and hit before repairs are finished. The pace of destruction is outrunning the pace of repair, and with each cycle, the gap grows. The strategic consequence extends far beyond Luhansk. The same rail network that supplies the Donbas front also branches southward to Crimea, through Mariupol, Berdyansk, and Melitopol. When the northern junction is hit, the flow southward also narrows. Fuel shortages reported in Crimea, coupon lines at gas stations stretching for kilometers in Yalta, restrictions on civilian fuel purchases, are a direct downstream effect of what is happening hundreds of kilometers to the north. When the same vein feeds multiple fronts, a cut at one point drains all of them. And it is not only happening from the air. Atesh operatives on the ground are systematically targeting the components that take longest to replace. Signal relay cabinets, switching systems, fiber optic communication lines. A damaged rail can be replaced in hours. A specialized signal box can take days or weeks because spare parts are limited and each component requires precise calibration. The drones strike from above, the partisans dismantle from below, and when both work together at the same time, the repair cycle collapses. 7 distinct Ukrainian forces are now operating in coordination across this campaign. The 3rd Corps controls depth strikes into Luhansk. The 1st Azov Corps operates near Donetsk. The 413th Regiment and 412th Nemesis Brigade target logistics nodes and the southern land corridor. SBU Alpha conducts deep penetration strikes. The Deep Strike Command Center ties it all together. On May 28th, this combined effort temporarily blocked the Novorossiya highway entirely. Fuel tankers burning, all other traffic forced onto long detours. The main road between the south and the front effectively shut. Cutting one point creates a local disruption. And when 7 units cut simultaneously across an entire network, the system does not slow down. It starts to break. Putin gave his generals a deadline, Donbas, by the end of 2026. ISW's assessment of the force, currently positioned on the Luhansk axis, describes it as depleted and insufficient to capture even Lyman, the first obstacle on the road to Sloviansk, which itself is the first major objective on the way to the ultimate goal. Russia cannot get past the first step of a multi-step plan. And Russian military bloggers, voices that are typically far more honest than official statements, are saying it openly. When Rybar writes about the lies of leadership, this is what he means. Progress is being reported to the Kremlin. On the ground, units cannot even change their positions. General Syrskyi said it directly. For the first time since the war began, Ukraine launched more drone attacks on Russian territory than Russia launched on Ukraine. Let that inversion land for a moment. The country that started this war as the aggressor is now absorbing more strikes than it is delivering. Putin's order points forward. His machine is moving backward. And somewhere in a trench along the Luhansk line, a soldier who arrived after 1 week of training is waiting for fuel that is burning on a rail somewhere between Kursk and the front, waiting for ammunition that never arrives, waiting for food that is stuck at a junction that no longer functions, waiting for evacuation that cannot come because the vehicle has no fuel to move. The power on paper does not disappear dramatically. It does not collapse in a single moment. It bleeds, slowly, train by train, junction by junction, relay cabinet by relay cabinet, and every drop that burns on those tracks is a drop that never reaches the front, never fuels a tank, never loads a shell, never sustains a soldier who was told he was fighting for Russian soil. Putin built this machine to take Donbas, but the vein that feeds the machine is being cut, and a machine without fuel does not fight. It waits. And waiting, on a battlefield shaped like this one, is just another way of losing.